spending time here. There's a couple of reminders here that we're supposed to give to you. You want to make sure that you complete an evaluation at the end of class. You probably got the download, the exact address. I'll give it to you here somewhere, wherever it went. I'm not sure where it went. But anyway, fill out an evaluation at the end of the class if you would, and tell them lots of great things. So thanks again for taking the time to come here. Appreciate it very much. Hopefully what I can do is give you some nuggets in just a short period of time, some strategies to where you can take them away, go back home, and give yourself an extra couple transactions or more, maybe even make an extra, $50,000, $100,000 or more in the next 12 months. How's that sound? How many of you guys would like that? Okay, cool. All right, just checking, making sure. So, my name is Michael Simpson. I am the founder and senior instructor of the National Commercial Real Estate Association. And just a little bit about my background is I started real estate in 1988, and then what happened was I was a residential agent, and I did over 100 deals a year for several years as a residential agent. Then I took this commercial class, and I fell in love with everything about it, the numbers, the commissions, everything about it. And so the instructor called me at the end of the class and said, "Hey Michael, if you come over to my office and help me build a commercial division, I'll mentor you." So I went over to that office. At that time it was RE/MAX in Los Alamitos, California. Started helping him build a commercial division. At the same time I was doing my residential sales. And then what I did is I started carving out a time block for a commercial transaction. So I time blocked 2 hours a day for my commercial investment business. So I started doing that for a while, and then I really struggled a lot in the beginning, to be honest with you. It was very difficult for me to get going, and I almost quit. And then all of a sudden it kind of opened up, and then it exploded. And next thing I knew, I was number 3 for California and Hawaii for all of RE/MAX for commercial. And so then I was introduced to Keller Williams in July of 2002. And I opened up an office. I became an OP and a broker of record, and we opened up several offices down and around the Southern California area. And then recently, about a few years ago, I decided to start replacing myself with any of the hands-on managerial type of operational activities. And so now I'm freed up to just do what I'm loving, which is coaching, training, and teaching across the country. So I'm having a really good time with that. And one of the things that I decided to do was launch a company that is a completely separate entity that's only training based, but I wanted it to be a university style training. So our theme is university style training with real world strategies. And so that's where I came up with the National Commercial Real Estate Association, the NCREA. That's where that all came about. And so we do things like continuing education credits and designations when we have our classes. Any of you are welcome to come see me at the end or go to my website and see what types of classes we do, because or talk to me about it, give me your card, and I'll contact you. I'll have my coordinator contact you, because we're always looking to do more training events. So if you'd like us to come out and do a training event near you or at a board near you, just give us a call or come see me and give me your card, and we'll contact you and reach out to you, okay? So that's kind of my background, my history. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is the overview. Some of the overview we'll get to here are the questions of multifamily properties, how to leverage multifamily properties in your business, an overview of select family, some of the challenges that we have. So what are the questions? We're going to cover 5 different topics. Why, what, who, where, and when. So why the opportunity of multifamily? Multifamily has huge cash flows and more stable deals that will lead to less risk. So if you have a 10-unit apartment complex, the bigger the deal, the less the risk, because there's more cash flow. If you have a 10-unit apartment complex, for example, and there's a 2% vacancy, and there's 2 vacancies, what's the vacancy factor? 20%, right? 20% vacancy factor in that situation. If you have a single family house that you have rented out and you have a vacancy, what's the vacancy factor? 100%. So that can be a real significant impact on the cash flow of that property. Now, if you have a 40-unit building or a 100-unit building, it's easier math, 100-unit building, and you have 2 vacancies, the vacancy factor is only, what, 2%? So you see what I'm talking about when we say that the bigger the deal, the less the risk. Bigger deals also lead to bigger profits usually. If you have a $2 million asset in a certain area and the appreciation rate is 10% in that area in any given year, what did the investor earn for appreciation that year? $200,000, right? Well, if they have the same property, it's a $4 million property right next door, and the appreciation rate is 10%, what do they earn for appreciation? $400,000. So would you rather have a $200,000 appreciation profit or a $400,000 appreciation profit? So again, the bigger the deal, the bigger the profit margins can be. Would you rather sell a $300,000 house, and this was kind of my aha when I was taking the commercial class, was would you rather sell a $300,000 house or a $3 million commercial transaction and have that larger commission? One of the things I want to do just real quick is give me an idea of who's in this room right now. How many of you in this room we usually have 3 different types of folks that come to these events when we're doing it. We have the agent that comes to a commercial class or an investment class, and they'll say, you know what, Michael, I just want to do a commercial investment deal when it falls on my plate. That's all I want to do, only if it falls on my plate. And then you have the residential agent that does both residential and commercial, and you're here, those agents are here because they want to add maybe an extra $100,000 or more to their bottom line with commercial investment transactions. They don't want to give up their residential business. Typically, they want to keep it going because they like it or they need the income, but they would also like to come over here and do some commercial investment transactions at the same time. And then you have full-time commercial agents, okay? So I'm going to ask you which ones you guys are here in a minute and really help me understand the room. So again, agent number one, I just want to do a commercial investment deal when it falls on my plate. I'm here just to kind of learn a little bit about it, but I'm a residential agent. And 2, I'm a residential agent. I'd like to do a little bit of residential and come over here and do some commercial. Or 3, I'm a full-time commercial agent. Any agent number 1s in the room? Okay, and full. Number 2s? We got all the residential agents in the room. Awesome, that's great. I love you guys. That really is my niche, is that residential marketplace. And how about number 3s, full-time folks? All right, and then the bulk also full-time folks. That's great. So that gives me an idea of what specifically things to talk about today. Multifamily properties, they take no more time or effort to buy houses. They take no more time than effort to, they're also one of the easier product types probably to list and sell, in my opinion. And then you have economies of scale. So economies of scale would be that if you have 4 10-unit apartments, you have an apartment here, an apartment there, an apartment there, an apartment there. You have to travel, you have to visit those 4 different locations. You have 4 different roofs that you need to replace at some point or another. You have 4 lawns that you need to have mown at some point or another. Now, so you have 40 doors, and by the way, we call that horizontally invested, when they're spread out like that. Now, if you have 40 doors, you have 40 doors all in one spot. Now you're vertically invested, by the way. We call that vertical investing. And they have their investment all in one spot. Now they only have to make 1 trip. They only have 1 roof that they need to replace. They only have 1 lawn that they need to mow. And all 40 of those tenants are paying for that 1 trip, that 1 visit. So you have the economies of scale. Lenders allow creative financing. They're much more flexible with financing. You create the appreciation, and you're not at the mercy of the market. So what I mean by that is, in a lot of areas right now, you can't buy low and sell high because the product is, there's so much demand, there's not a lot of supply. So what happens is we used to be able to buy low, and then we could buy it at low enough price to be able to have a margin to sell it high and flip it. Well, now we can't really do that in most of these marketplaces. So what you can do, you can't control the comps, in other words. You can't control the market, you can't control the cap rates because they are what they are. So what we can do is we can force the appreciation up by raising the NOI. So there's 4 different ways to increase the NOI. So you might want to write this down. And I remember it like this, by this ROEI is how I remember it. Rents, occupancy, expenses, income. ROEI. So you can raise rents, you can increase occupancy, you can decrease expenses, or you can find other income. Those are the 4 ways to increase the NOI. So you look at a property, you can just raise the rents, that's going to push up the net operating income. Now, by the way, if you're in the room and you don't know how to calculate net operating income, or you're not sure what I'm talking about in that regard, then come see me after the class, or go plug into one of our classes where we do an introductory course where I'll walk you through how to do those calculations and how you get to your NOI. So you can raise rents, that'll increase your NOI. You can decrease occupancy. Maybe you're looking at an asset that has a 75% vacancy rate and you take it to 85%, or you take it from 85 to 95%. You can decrease expenses. We can talk a lot about decreasing expenses. And one of the things I want to say real quick before I forget is I'm doing a webinar, I've arranged a webinar with Skylar and Gracie as a follow-up to this, a webinar in March 25th at 11 a.m., March 25th, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and also April 15th at 11 a.m., tax day, Pacific Standard Time. April 15th and March 25th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where I'm going to get more. First one will be buyer, second one will be seller. So some of these things that I'm talking about right now, like this forced appreciation, I'm just kind of skimming over several things today, just because we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to come back later and spend more time with you and get a little more in depth with you if you're interested in that. So when we talk about decreasing expenses, that's something we could spend 15, 20 minutes on. Let's say, for example, that you just go in, or an investor goes in and they change the meters on an asset from master meter to separately metered, for example. That could decrease expenses and increase the NOI. The fourth way would be find other income. Find other income. So again, we could talk about all the different types of other income that are out there, but we don't really have the time to do that right now. I'll give you an example, though, of one of the things that I saw. I have a coaching member that I did a deal with, and it was our listing in Long Beach. And I went and did a walkthrough with him, and it had this, like a fallout shelter type of area underneath the property. It was a massive area. And we're doing the walkthrough, and I look over at the buyer, and he's got the schematics as we're walking through this section. And I looked over at it and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, we're going to convert this to all storage." And I thought, wow, what a great idea, because it's near the water, near the beach, where storage is high demand. So that was a great idea that he came up with. He immediately added a lot of other income to that property and therefore increased the NOI. Okay, so anytime you do one or more of those four things, you're increasing the net operating income. So now we know the value of properties determined by taking the NOI divided by the cap rate, right? So everybody, let's just say if you take $100,000 of NOI and you divide it by a 10 cap. Now I'm going to use 10 cap, I realize there's not a lot of 10 caps out there anywhere these days, unfortunately. But just for the sake of math, I'm going to use that number. So if you take 100,000 divided by a 10 cap, what's our value? $1 million, right? So let's say that you go in and you use a combination of any of those four methods to raise the NOI, to increase the NOI, and you increase it to 150,000. Now we can't control the comps, can't control the cap, so we have the market is what the market is. So now we have 150,000 NOI, and we divide that by the same cap of 10, and what's our value? $1.5 million. $1.5 million. So the investor just made $500,000 by increasing the NOI. So it's a really powerful conversation to have, because you have some really good operators out there and you have some not so good operators that could be operating the property right now, and one of your great operators can go in and take over and increase the NOI and make a lot of money by doing that. So it's a great conversation to have. And then in some of the markets where we're like 4 and 5, like our market and less, if you only need $25,000 increase in the NOI to make that same $500,000. So it has a huge impact. So those significantly small increases in NOI can make a serious impact on the value. So that's what we call forced appreciation. The lender qualifies the property, by the way, not you. They're going to look, so your personal credit, your personal income and finances are not going to be looked at so much, because they're going to look more at the cash flow from the asset to make sure that it has enough income to cover the proposed debt. Now, lenders have general classifications for multifamily apartments based on both condition and quality, so that they can communicate with some sort of uniformity. They have Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. Class A are your newer institutional owned, usually your REITs, your real estate investment trusts that own these properties. They're typically 10 years old, 10 years old or more. Prime locations, garages, lots of amenities. Lots of amenities like tennis courts, gyms, exercise rooms, things like that. Laundry inside the facilities usually. They're usually really big complexes. Then you have your Class B apartments. These are going to be usually older and institutional owned and investor owned. 10 to 20 years old, good locations. They may not reflect the current design trends, so if you look at it, if we look at this, you can see it's not really something that we would build today. It doesn't look like something that we would build today. Many amenities of the Class A properties, though. Then you have Class C apartments. These are more than 20 years old, declining neighborhoods in most cases. A little bit of deferred maintenance now. Smaller units, they didn't build them as big as they do nowadays, because apparently nowadays we need more room than we did back then. Smaller units, fewer amenities. And then you have Class D apartments that are usually in older, declining neighborhoods, high vacancy, more than 20 years old, deferred maintenance, and can be, in some cases, dangerous. Then you have the different types of apartments. So we have garden apartments that are usually in suburban or rural areas, 1 to 3 stories. You can access units from the outside with no hallways, low density, built usually where land is cheap, parking lots are common, no central lobby. Then you have mid to high rise. Mid-rise, I mean suburban areas again, or urban areas, 4 to 9 stories. Access units from central hallways. Medium density, 25 units an acre, typically. Parking lots are common, central lobbies. You have high-rise apartments, and these are in urban areas, 10 plus stories. Access units from central hallways and elevators, high density. Usually they're built vertically where land is expensive. Parking structures, central lobby, extensive amenities. Okay, I'm going to come back to that slide here in a minute. So let's look at who buys these types of properties. You have your independent investors that are independent analysis, and then you have high-level investors like your REITs, your folks who do syndications, and then you have development companies. They typically are going to buy a certain asset. You have certain types of investors that like to purchase certain types of assets. If you have an investor that is super busy, makes a good amount of income, doesn't want to do much hands-on maintenance, doesn't have time, doesn't have the ability to do that, then a Class A product is usually going to be a pretty good product for them to purchase. Hopefully they buy the property, they just are looking for a little bit of market appreciation, hopefully maybe a tax shelter. Again, they're going to buy it, they're not going to have a lot of hands-on involvement there. But they're also going to trade that for less cash flow and therefore so less return on their money because they're buying this asset that doesn't need a whole lot of work, doesn't need a whole lot of management. So those properties are usually going to sell for a lower cap rate. Then you have your Class D properties where the investor says, you know, I want to do a little bit of hands-on, but I don't want to do any major rehab with those types of properties. And so as you can see, the older property is starting to get a little old now. It's starting to show some signs of wear and tear. So the investor that's selling that is going to have to sell it for a little higher cap rate, a little lower price than a Class A property, for example, because of those issues that it might have. Then you have a Class C property that needs major rehab usually, and this is where we start talking about the forced appreciation products that are out there. Major rehab, Class C, value adds, the smaller properties, and the investor can go into that type of asset in a lot of cases and really have a great return on their investment because they're getting involved at such a high level. And then they can fix it up, raise the rents, and get a higher return on their money. And then you have Class D properties, which are dangerous areas typically, and then the investor usually should ask himself if they really want to go into that area and mess with that kind of property because, as the saying goes, you can kind of change the property, but you can't always do anything about the location. So it may not necessarily always make sense to do that. So there's really 3 different types of investors that are out there. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to ask investors questions, great questions. I like to demonstrate my experience by asking questions. One of the things I used to do is I used to go to investors and I would sell. So I would tell them how good I was. I'm the #1 agent in the office, top 1% in the United States, #3 commercial agent, blah, blah, blah. And then I started learning, well, that's not all that effective because who does the consumer care about? themselves, right? And so a lot of times they're thinking, well, that's great, but what's that have to do with me, right? And so I started learning, well, if I consult by asking great questions, then I'm drawing them toward me versus selling by pushing them away. And so I came up with some questions that I could ask people whenever I ran into them to demonstrate my experience. So I'll ask an investor, I'll say something like, well, there's 3 different types of investors that are out there. There's the cash flow investor, there's the appreciation investor, and there's the middle of the road. Which one would you say you are? And then they'll typically answer that question as to who they think they are. And as you look up here again, you can see you have cash flow investors, appreciation investors, and middle of the road. So there really are pretty much 3 different types of investors in most cases, and if you can figure out which one they are and help them determine which one they are, then it's easier to hone in on what they're really looking for. Because some of the things that they say, when you ask them what they're looking for, have you ever heard some of the things that they say? What are some of the things that they say when you say, well, tell me what you're looking for? What are some of the things that they say? Yeah, something that makes money, a good deal. You hear that all the time. Well, I'm looking for a good deal, something with cash flow, something that pencils out, something that makes sense. And I'm thinking, well, no, I don't always know, that's why I'm asking, right? So this is, if you don't understand clearly what they mean and you start trying to work with them, it's you're setting yourself up to lose right out of the gates. So one of the things I'll do is I'll use language to kind of hone in on that. So I'm going to ask them, I'm going to use scripts when I see them. I'm going to ask the question, there's 3 different types of investors, cash flow, appreciation, middle of the road. Which one would you say they are? You are. And then I'm going to say something like, tell me what you're looking for. And they almost always say what you guys just said, as you guys all know. Or they'll say, well, I'm looking for something with some upside. You hear that a lot too, right? Looking for something with some upside potential. And so I'll say that, I'll throw them some questions. I'll say, oh, that's great. So you're looking for something with some upside potential. So you're looking to do a value play versus something that's vanilla. And then they'll answer that question sometimes. And sometimes I'll say, do you have a certain split requirement in mind that you're looking for? And are you looking to invest horizontally or are you looking to invest vertically? Now, what are they thinking when you ask them those questions in most cases? Right? Yeah, exactly. What did he just say? And so a lot of times, let me explain what I just said. So you're looking to do something where you can purchase it with some upside potential. So you're looking to do a value play versus something that's vanilla. Whenever somebody purchases a property and they have some sort of upside, whatever the upside is their value play. So if they're going to buy it to raise rents, so you're buying it to raise rents and that's your value play. Or they're buying it to change zoning. I'm going to buy it, I'm going to change the zoning from industrial warehouse to multifamily or residential. So you're buying it to change the zoning and that's your value play. Okay, so that's what value play means. Now, if there is no value play, if there is no upside, like this right here, Class A, then it's a vanilla. So you're buying something that's a vanilla. Turnkey, doesn't mean any work really, okay? That's all that means. Now, what is the splits? When I say what are the splits, do you have a split requirement? Does anybody know what that is? The bedrooms and the bathrooms. Bedrooms and bathrooms is all it is. Sometimes investors like 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms because they're easier to rent, they rent